Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Horned Frog Blitz podcast. Took a week off last week, but we're back at it again. I'm Jeremy Clark, joined as always by my good friend Jeremiah Glenn. Jeremiah, how's things going tonight?
Good. It seems like a really long time since we've done one of these. It has only been a week.
It's only been a week. We got to take a week off too. We had the bye week, but there's a ton of stuff to get into tonight. I mean, we're going to have a action-packed show, as you can say, as you would say. We're going to talk a little West Virginia. I know it's been a week since they played, but we saw some improvement in that game. We're going to talk the very questionable college playoff rankings that were released last night. We're going to get into some Big 12 talk, some interesting games this week, and of course, as always, we're going to dive into a little recruiting. Some interesting nuggets out there. We got a little update on Travion, some other names for us to keep an eye on. But first, we're going to dive into West Virginia, and the Frogs coming off a 40-10 win. Probably their most complete game that they've played this year on defense. I was really impressed with what I saw. Sure, the Mountaineers did drop a few passes, but overall, you got to be pretty pleased. They hold them to 327 yards of total offense, 10 points, and anytime you can do that to Dana Holgorsen coach's offense, you're doing pretty good things.
That's a huge win. It was a huge win for them. I think it's going to help build their confidence even more. The young guys on defense, I do feel, are starting to play a little bit better. They did get beat deep a few times, and if West Virginia, connects on a couple of those deep throws, obviously it's a different game. But if you take those out of the equation, I was impressed with the way the defense kind of flowed to the ball. I know a lot of people kind of pointed out Ty Summers as one of the ones they've noticed that seems to be playing more downhill and not thinking as much. And I kind of saw the same thing. I do see him still panicking sometimes before the snap to make sure he's lined up in the right place. But once he's there, I feel like he's getting more of an understanding of where he needs to be on the field, and he's making plays. And that's what you need from your linebacker spot. And if he can continue to develop and then the safeties can continue to develop the way they are, I think this thing can continue to get better. A sneaky stat, I guess. I was looking at sack totals for the team, and somehow Caraway's got 5.5 sacks kind of under the radar. And he could end up with close to 10 sacks on the season. So that's a big season for him, and they need that threat rushing the passer to help in the secondary.
Even more impressive when he didn't have Davion Pearson at the beginning of the year. You didn't have another threat. I mean, Bryson Henderson has come on and played well in Tua Ua's absence and in Lathan's absence, and he's probably one of the guys that answered the call this year when defense needed someone to step up. Bryson really has performed well, but that makes Josh's stats a little bit more impressive when you know that he had to do that without three seniors on the line with him. So all I can say about West Virginia's drop passes is thank goodness for true freshmen.
Yeah.
Because it was those two true freshmen that dropped a pass. And remember David Sills, everyone remembers 5 years ago when Lane Kiffin offered the 7th grade quarterback. That was him. Now he's playing receiver starting for West Virginia as a true freshman. But it was strange because leading up to that game, we hadn't really heard a talk about any talk from Coach P about this one guy I'm about to mention, Julius Lewis. It was funny to see him out there getting the first start because everyone up in the press box was kind of surprised and thinking,
they were fumbling through the papers
24's out there, and we're that's Julius Lewis out there. He's much bigger than what I remembered him being in high school. He's added some great weight.
Yeah.
I think he's grown at least 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches.
He looks a legit 6'1".
Yeah, he's a bigger kid than I remember, especially because I saw him a few times at camps, and obviously went and saw him playing a game last year, but didn't fare too well early on, and they quickly yanked Julius and brought in. You saw kind of a two-man rotation most of the night between Torrance Mosley and Corey O'Malley. And
it's a good recovery by him. He did get burnt, but he was able to recover. He found the ball, and he made a play on the ball.
4.33 will do that.
Yeah, and so you got a chance to see his closing speed there. He's able to close in on the receiver. I agree with you, though. He is much bigger than I remember. I remember 170-ish pounds, maybe 165 pounds, and he looks every bit of 190 right now. I don't know if that's accurate, but he looks really thick, and he looks like he's grown some. So that could be a good development to watch as he continues to get game experience and get better. But obviously, Coach Patterson saw something in practice that made him want to get a shot.
He's been high on Julius ever since they got a commitment from him, and actually ever since Julius went up to a camp before his senior year and ran the 4.33, and I think he ran a 3.9 or 4 flat shuttle right in front of Coach Patterson. And so anytime you can run those kind of times in front of a head coach that loves speed on defense, right, you're going to get their attention. But he's been talking highly of Julius ever since I can remember. But it's exciting to see. I mean, they've got 30. This team is, if you sit back and realize this team, we got to go by the playoff rankings now. You can't say number 3 or number 5 TCU. It's number 8 TCU because that's what they're going to go by. It's still odd to me. But anyway, you have an 8-0 team. They're number 8. They've got some impressive wins, and they've done this with 30 true and redshirt freshmen.
Is it 31 now, or is it still? Is it? 30?
I believe it's 30. I think Broadnax made 30.
Okay, that is unbelievable. Those numbers are unreal.
And I haven't checked the numbers, but it's got to be within the top 5 in the country of freshmen that have played. And you're talking about a team that was. I mean, right now they're playing good football. I mean, especially on offense, especially receivers. When you have guys like Kobe Listenby that went down, and obviously Juwan Story's going to be gone for the rest of the year. Coach P said that on Wednesday. Emmanuel Porter has been injured, so you had guys like Jerson Stewart, Jalen Austin, obviously Kavonte Turpin, Tony James, all those freshmen that are playing on offense where you thought maybe they had a chance to all redshirt. They've been asked to come in and make plays for this offense. They've all done a good job. And they've all done a good job when asked to come in there and make some plays. But overall, I was never nervous about this West Virginia game like I was some other games. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it's just the home factor. Maybe it was the blackout. Playing in front of that crazy student section, which, man, just every week those guys impress me more and more. The way they get into the game, they're there 30 minutes before kickoff, jam-packed. I mean, it was funny to see all the Halloween costumes. I couldn't stop laughing about the T-Rex over there. But, I mean, it just, you gotta be proud of the student body over there, the way they're backing up the football team right now. Hopefully you see that come basketball season, but it's going to take some wins just like it did for the football team. But overall, very impressed with that win, and I think it's going to give them a lot of confidence headed into Saturday against another very tough opponent. TCU has not had success on the road in Stillwater, but we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But overall, thoughts on that win, huge in my opinion, and little bit disappointed that they didn't get the recognition I thought they deserved after that win. But you know what? Still a lot of football left. Still a lot of teams that can have some impressive wins against.
See, I'm having a hard time with this one. They played on a Thursday night, national television, so everybody in the country saw it. Yet I felt like by Saturday that game was completely forgotten.
Yeah.
So you're right. I don't think they were getting the respect that they were due on that, but that's okay. If they can continue to be disrespected and they can continue to have that chip on their shoulder like they have, I like where they are, and I think I really am believing that what I'm seeing on the field is improvement across the board on defense. And I don't care if you score 50 a game on offense. If you can score 40 a game, if you're holding them to 20,
yeah,
that's no big deal. So
sure,
I think the improvement is there to stay. Obviously, you've got the most explosive offenses coming up that you've seen all year, with the exception of Tech. I think you'll see the defense continue to play better every game that they've got under their belt. They're getting a little bit better, more reps, more understanding of what they need to do, and more understanding of what to expect.
Well, the guy that we can talk probably all hour about, two guys actually have big games once again. Trevon and Josh go out there and just have a great showing. I mean, the way Boykin was playing the other night just looked like he was on a playground.
He was toying with them.
He was playing playground football. He was telling Josh, run to the merry-go-round, turn around, and I'll throw a pass. But if not, I'm going to run around the monkey bars because no one can catch me. I mean, that's how it was. I mean, West Virginia could not get a hand on him to save their life, and they had pretty good pursuit. And some of those moves he made was just incredible. And obviously, everyone knows the story by now about him having that third down run, evading, 7 tacklers and running to West Virginia's sideline, and all Holgorsen can do is high-five him. And he even said, what the hell else was I supposed to do? I mean, kid made a great play.
You can't jump on your players there. Every one of those guys had a shot at him, and they couldn't even get a hand on him. So Holgorsen knows greatness when he sees it, and like Boykin said after the game, they have a mutual respect for each other. And I think you're starting to see that as the season goes along, that opponents of TCU are being more and more vocal about what they're witnessing with Boykin.
Yeah.
And I think that even lends itself to, I guess it makes you see more how special of a season this is that he's having, and it's getting recognized. And it's funny. I see all these the Heisman polls and all this and that, and you'll hear them talk about Boykin for the Heisman during the game. But then every time I see something roll out on ESPN or something like that, it's got 4 other players. He's not even being mentioned.
And Coach P even mentioned that this past weekend as he's watching some of that, they're not even mentioning Trevon. And I'm just thinking, how in the world can you not? I mean, certainly I give Leonard Fournette all the credit in the world.
Doubt.
He's a great running back.
Doubt.
But
after that,
I was talking to someone last night. If you ask me who the Heisman finalists are right now, I can name 2. I can tell you Leonard Fournette and Trevon Boykin. I can't give you those 2 are so far out ahead of everyone else that I can't even really tell you a third and fourth. I mean, I think for a fact that Fournette and Boykin have already stamped their invites to New York City. The good thing is Trevon still has 4 games left to prove his point, 3 of them coming against top 15 teams. So if he goes out and puts up hellacious numbers like he has in the past 2 or 3 weeks, I mean, you've got, even though this Heisman Trophy is being awarded, it seems like, to a quarterback every year, how can you argue with the guy that has stats like he has right now that are going to be better than what the past, Johnny Manziel, Marcus Mariota, all those guys have put up the last few years?
It's baffling to me that the lack of respect that I feel like he's getting from the writers and the media. But if all you gotta do is watch the guy play, and he's the real deal. So, like you said, the big games are coming up, and he'll have a chance to make an even stronger case. But I know he's not worried about all that stuff right now. He just wants to keep winning. So,
lack of respect. Let's dive into that for a second. College football playoffs came out last night. I don't mind the number 1. I thought Clemson should be number 1.
Sure, me too.
I thought LSU deserves to be number 2.
And I was impressed that they didn't have Ohio State in one of the top 2 spots. So I'll give that.
And overall, I'm not too disappointed about the rankings, how they came out. I was surprised that TCU came in at number 8. I was surprised that Baylor came in at number 6. I was disappointed that they've already got 2 one-loss teams in front of both those teams. Now, I'll give Notre Dame credit.
Their loss was
to Clemson, and it was on the road, and it was a close game. And they had to do it with the backup quarterback when they lost that game.
I guess I understand that loss, but I'm not okay with them being in the top 5 right now this early, because that's something you have to work your way back from as a loss, in my opinion. And like you said, I mean, it's not that TCU was at 8 and that Baylor was at 6. It was the fact that 2 one-loss teams were in front of them. One of them, Alabama. This one's the one that chaps me. I'm sorry.
Alabama chaps me.
It chaps me because they lost to a 2-loss Ole Miss team at home.
That got killed by Memphis.
Whipped up on by Memphis and was completely exposed. The fact that they struggled to beat a 4-loss at the time Tennessee team that's not a good football team. They have no offense whatsoever.
No.
And they won 19-14 at the last minute of the game to pull that out. And yet you're telling me that's the number 4 team in the country. Listen, I understand what they're all saying. The pedigree, the talent level. Okay, that's fine. It comes to results on the field. And that's all that should matter. And I'm sorry, Alabama could win any game at any given time that they play against. But right now, they should not be number 4 in my opinion.
If you ask me right now, could Baylor beat Alabama? I'd say they can. If you ask me if TCU could beat Alabama, I'd say they can.
I agree on both.
I think Baylor played Notre Dame, could beat Notre Dame. TCU could beat Notre Dame. The good news is, at this time last year when the first rankings came out, of the 4, only one of them was in it when the final rankings happened. And Ohio State was 16 at this time last year. Remember how far down they were ranked? So you have optimism there. It's going to be fun to watch the way the Big 12 backloaded their schedule is going to help them this year and especially the way Oklahoma State's playing, because last year it was just TCU and Baylor. No one else was in the conversation. Now you've got Oklahoma and Oklahoma State that are in that conversation. So these 4 teams are going to be headbutting one another in the next few weeks. And if TCU can go on and win in Stillwater, win in Norman, I know Kansas is on the schedule too. Hopefully they don't play Kansas like they did last year, for crying out loud. And they finish up with home at Baylor. Obviously, if they finish undefeated with 3 teams being in the top 15, they're going to be in. The disaster is what happens if Oklahoma beats. I mean, Oklahoma has 1 loss, but what happens if Baylor and TCU? What if it's the same scenario as last year, where I don't know, maybe TCU wins the head-to-head this year, but Oklahoma beats Baylor, and so there's 2, and Oklahoma beats TCU. What if there's There's
not going to be a 1-loss Big 12 team that'll make it in my opinion. Period. But my concern is this.
What if it's Oklahoma?
My concern.
What if it's Oklahoma with wins over TCU and Baylor?
I still don't think.
And Oklahoma State.
Man,
they got OU on the side of the helmet.
And that was our talk we had yesterday. Which, if this was OU and Texas instead of Baylor and TCU, we both feel like they'd be in the top 4 and 5. Here's my thing. My big concern is this: if Alabama beats LSU this weekend, they're both 1 loss. Yeah. I think they both still stay in front of TCU. And then you have this problem. TCU, say they beat Oklahoma State. Obviously, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but just think about this.
But it's fun to talk about. Hypothetical
if TCU beats Oklahoma State, but say Baylor has a loss, all of a sudden their ranking's not as high. So if TCU was to beat Baylor, they didn't beat as high of a ranked opponent, and that affects their ability to move up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Big 12 could totally shoot itself in the foot these last 3 games and beat the hell out of each other. And then what?
Here's a question for you. Here's 2 hypotheticals for you. What happens if you have – obviously, the best thing that happened for TCU from the SEC perspective is for LSU to beat Alabama.
Absolutely.
But what if Bama beats LSU and then Bama somehow loses another game because they're susceptible to lose another game? LSU somehow makes it to the SEC championship, and then you have a Florida team that I still think is going to lose another game. Say if Florida has 2 losses and LSU has 1 loss. They play in the SEC championship. Florida wins that game. They have 2 losses.
So your best SEC team is going to have 2 losses.
Yeah. Do they, even though you have an undefeated team and some 1-loss teams, are they going to put a 2-loss SEC team in front of a 1-loss team?
You want to know why I think I'm so jaded? Because in my heart, I believe they'd put a 2-loss SEC team
I do too.
And that's what's sad about this whole process is I feel like a 2-loss SEC team would get in because they got so much hype and media-driven coverage behind them, obviously being, SEC being signed with the ESPN.
Right.
They drive that. I mean, that's their that's their cash cow.
Yeah.
And I hate it. I'm a college football fan. I hate the fact that big, television networks can control a sport.
It's an industry.
And it's sickening to me for these kids that bust their tail on the field. And I don't want this to sound like sour grapes, because it's not. It's reality, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it.
Sure.
But it is. I'm seeing it happen and unfold right in front of my eyes, and it's really disturbing. I saw something really interesting on Twitter today, real quick. Vegas came out and said if TCU played Clemson and LSU on a neutral field, they'd be favored in both games.
Doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me either, but in Vegas,
obviously it
knows what the heck they're talking
people.
about. Well, again, you got a SEC heavy room in there.
Well, here's another hypothetical for you. This one's going to really make you think. If TCU takes care of Oklahoma State, Baylor takes care of Kansas State, they play their schedule. Obviously, TCU's going to have to beat Oklahoma. Baylor's going to have to beat Oklahoma. When they play on Black Friday, there's going to be some losses ahead of them right now. Say, for instance, if TCU is number 2 or Baylor's number 2 and TCU's number 3, what happens if in Fort Worth we see a game exactly how we saw last year a 3-point game that's decided in the last second with the field goal. Both teams are undefeated. The winner's going to remain undefeated, obviously. But what do you say? Say for instance, TCU's number 3 and Baylor's number 2. What do you say when you're the number 3 team and your only loss is to the number 2 team that's undefeated? How far do they drop?
I see where you're going with that. I think it'll be a cold day in hell before they let 2 Big 12 teams into the playoffs. They will figure out something to not allow that to happen.
I agree with you, but if you think about it, there's a lot of talking heads out there. If there's been one thing that's been very common is even though TCU doesn't have the best reputation playing defense right now, they're still among a lot of people's top team. They still think TCU, obviously Vegas does, TCU could go anywhere and beat anybody. A lot of people feel the same about Baylor, even though they've played a crappy non-conference schedule. They still feel that they can go and win basically against, Kirk Herbstreit, a lot of guys had Baylor as their number 1 team. So how do you argue the fact that when a lot of people's, in their minds, top 2 teams play against one another, and yet the loser only loses by 3 points, how do you keep them out of a playoff? If your SEC champ has 2 losses, it's all hypothetical. There's a lot of football. We could be talking next week and TCU could have lost to Oklahoma State. We don't know, but it's fun to talk about because there's so many variables you have to think about. And before long, they're going to have to expand this to an 18 playoff.
They have to. I think my biggest issue right now with the committee is this. I feel like their criteria changes to fit whatever they want to say whenever they want to say it. The fact that I heard Long come out and say that one team doesn't look like a complete team offense and defense. Coach Patterson has touched on this. Who cares if you win 58-50 if you're just an offense-heavy team that year?
Why do you have to be
a complete team? It's who is the best team on the field that night. And again, I feel like this is a way for them to eliminate who they want to eliminate. You can eliminate the Big 12 teams with their quote-unquote weak defenses, and you can sit there and knock them for not being a complete team. When was that a criteria? That wasn't a criteria last year.
No.
It wasn't. It was a criteria, I feel like it was just came out of nowhere.
And it even says I want to say it says in their little bylaws that they have that the margin of victory is not a big consideration. So, we could talk about it all night.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not ticked off at where TCU's at. I would say I'm a little disappointed, but
I think it worked out just right for them.
Because you know what? I asked Coach P about it on Wednesday, if he is disappointed. He really didn't get into comments. But we all know, and we've known it for a long time, they play better when they feel disrespected. When people don't talk about them, that's when they strive. That's when they are playing their best football. So if anything, if it put that little chip on their shoulder a little bit more, then I'm all for it.
I think I was shocked to see him at 8, but after the dust settled, I sat back and I said, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's enough to piss them off enough to where they will come out breathing fire in Oklahoma State. I feel bad for Oklahoma State because I think TCU's going to come out flying around the ball. And, we'll get into that game, but I think TCU wins in the first time in Oklahoma State this weekend. So
well, let's dive into it, man, because it's Stillwater 0-2 for the Frogs. They've lost by a combined 36 points in 2 road games. But they didn't have a Trevon Boykin like they have now. He was young.
Different offensive scheme.
Probably the face, everyone's seen the face Trevon made after Kindred hit that kid from Iowa State. That's what Trevon's face looked like the first time he took a snap at Oklahoma State. That's how confused he looked.
That offense that showed up in Oklahoma State in 2013 it's so much different. They're so much different now, and that's obvious man's talking here, but to see where they've come offensively and to see how much control he has over the offense now, I think Oklahoma State's going to be shocked at what they see. I say that. They got to see it some last year, but I think he's even improved since that game.
They're going to be facing the top defensive line they faced all year. Jimmy Bean and Emmanuel Ogball are two of the top defensive ends in the country. The offensive line's going to have a tough task. Big V obviously went down against West Virginia. His status is still unknown. I don't think even if he was healthy, I don't think Coach P would say it right now. But if he's not, you have Joseph Noteboom playing left tackle, and you have Matt Pryor playing right tackle. And Noteboom has got the experience, and obviously Pryor has some game experience, doesn't have very many starts under his belt, but you got to look at that matchup and think that might play into Oklahoma State's favor, especially with the talent those two guys have and their defensive tackle. They're definitely going to be the best defensive front TCU's faced all year, and as you say, in big ball games like this, it always starts up front, and that's going to be a matchup that I'll watch all game.
Sure, and I do think that gives Oklahoma State a chance to win this game is having those guys, but I think that is where Trevon is the great equalizer. His ability to move around the pocket and run, I think it will keep those guys at bay just a little bit. They can't just pin their ears back and run at him. He'll kill them.
Yeah.
He'll tuck the ball and run for 150 yards, and they know that. And so they're going to have to try to game plan. Listen to their defensive coordinator talk just this week. He said, we don't have a plan for how to stop them yet. We hope we can figure it out by Saturday, but they know watching film that TCU throws so many formations at you. They have so many weapons. They spread the ball around so much. There's so much to prepare for. You're not going to stop their offense. You can only hope to slow it down a little bit. And, I don't see anything that I've seen from Oklahoma State this year on defense to make me think they're going to be able to stop TCU's offense.
One thing I like about Oklahoma State is their resiliency. I mean, they have played some close games this year. I mean, they're kind of similar in TCU in that matter because they played in overtime against West Virginia. Everyone knows how they played down in Austin, beating Texas the way they did. They came back last week against Texas Tech down by 17 3 times. And, I mean, Texas Tech's defense isn't nothing to write home about, but they scored 70. One of those touchdowns was actually a pick six, so you got to think they scored 63 on the road in a tough environment. They've got a great two-quarterback system of Mason Rudolph and J.W. Walsh. Rudolph's a good passer. Walsh is a good runner. Walsh can throw it. I mean, if you look at the game when they were up 56-53, he launched that 73-yarder to James Washington, who, by the way, is just another good Big 12 receiver in the same light as Jakeem Grant and Sterling Shepard. I think
There's so much skill in this conference. People want to talk about the lack of defense in this conference.
Maybe it has something to do with the offense.
I think there's so much skill in Texas right now, and there's so many skill guys, and they want to play in these Big 12 offenses. And everybody that's talking about putting them up against these SEC teams, defenses, let's see it. If everybody wants to talk about it, let's see it. Let them in these games. Let the offenses play these SEC defenses. Because we saw one of the most vaunted SEC defenses last year in the Peach Bowl. And I've had this argument with somebody today that tried to tell me that Ole Miss didn't want to be there, and that was the only reason that game happened. We both know.
I don't give a crap. I mean,
we both know that they said before that game that was a program-building bowl game that they could build off of a huge win over a team like TCU, and that meant something to their program. For them to turn around and try to say, obviously it's not Ole Miss saying that, it's fans. It's trying to say, that didn't have a bearing. Of course it did. I mean, they wanted to win that game.
That's big school fan mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just plain and simple big school fan mentality. Don't ever want to give – it's just like the Wisconsin fans that were saying, oh, our guys didn't want to play, yet there's J.J. Watt bawling his eyes out.
It's the freaking Rose Bowl. You're telling me Wisconsin, a Big Ten school who those kids dream of playing in a Rose Bowl, they didn't want to win. Come on. Come on, man.
Now, I will say this. I can't even remember his name. His name's escaping me, but the Ole Miss quarterback did look like he did not want to be at the game after the first couple series.
Mitchell. No. Bo Wallace, sorry.
Oh, man, my brain is just...
I was thinking Bo Levi Mitchell, but Bo Wallace.
Are you a believer?
But...
like SMU?
No, there's no doubt. TCU took that man's heart and soul on the field that game. After about 3 series, he wanted nothing else to do with that football field. And I've never really seen a quarterback's face. He looked so bewildered, and that was just TCU just pouring on the pressure. That's a big difference in the team last year to this year. As obviously is on the defensive side of the ball, but I believe the offense is better this year, so I think TCU can hang with any of those schools.
The Oklahoma State offense has come on in the last 2 weeks, though. I mean, but they have played some suspect defenses because you gotta look at it, and they're probably somewhere in between that because they played Kansas a couple weeks ago, scored 58, but everyone knows Kansas is letting everyone score on them.
I'm sorry, not to pick on Tech. I watched that game. I could not understand where was the defense. Like, I felt like at times there was 7 or 8 guys on the field on defense. It's the way it looked. There was so much space for the receivers and the running backs, and when the quarterback would take off running, it's like there was nobody even in the vicinity. And I felt like, are they even watching the game they're playing in? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know how Tech ever overcomes that down there. They've always had this explosive offense, but this defense is epically bad. It's as bad as I've ever seen in Lubbock.
Oh yeah. Well, Oklahoma State, if you have, any hope that the defense can shut them down a little bit, I mean, they have been put to the test a couple times this year. Central Michigan held them to 24. I mean, obviously that was the first game. Even Central Arkansas held them to 32. So you got to think Central Arkansas is an FCS school, but they played 3 close games. As I mentioned earlier, played Texas, won 30-27. Kansas State nearly beat them. Oklahoma State, if you want to argue, they kind of got away with a pretty bad call late in the game that helped them win that game 36-34.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take anything away from Kansas State, but they're not the best offensive team.
Right.
Obviously, they put up huge numbers against TCU in the first half, but second half TCU shut them down. And then they won on probably the impressive win to me was the win on the road at West Virginia, because it's tough to win in Morgantown, and that's kind of part of their resiliency, that they can stay in a game late, kind of like TCU, and come away late in the game with a play and end up winning. They're 8-0. They're 8-0 for a reason. This is a good chance for TCU to go out, send a message to the voters, to the committee. I don't even want to say voters anymore. But at this point, AP and coaches poll don't even matter. They shouldn't even have those guys fill out a ballot anymore, because it's all about the 15 guys that are meeting at the Omni Hotel every Tuesday or every Monday, whenever they meet.
I never thought I'd say this. I wish we had the BCS back. I think this system is more. There's more of a chance of corruption, I believe, in a system like this. When you got just a handful of human beings involved. Like somebody said on the board, at least with the computers, they could lie to you in the formula. The BS could get lost in the formula somewhere, So, like, here, you've got, it's 12, 13 people sitting in a room trying to figure it out.
What's Brad Edwards doing these days?
I don't know.
I haven't seen what he's doing. But we're going to be there in Stillwater. It's a fun environment. Oklahoma State has got some of the best fans in the Big 12. I mean, it's very hospitable. I haven't heard a TCU fan say one bad thing about it. It's a cool little college town. Traffic sucks getting into the stadium.
Sucks.
So if you're going, you better get there dang early and find a parking spot quick, because the traffic coming into the city so backed up. I mean, it took us forever last time we were up there to get into the to the stadium area. But should be a fun game, man. 2 8-0 teams. A lot of eyes are going to be on that game. A lot of eyes are going to be on Alabama, LSU. A lot of eyes are going to be on Kansas State and Baylor tomorrow. We're going to get into that in a second. But
do you want to give a prediction on this week's game yet, or you want to wait?
Let's package that. Let's package it. We'll do our story, and we'll give our reasonings why.
Cool.
I know you have a score in mind.
I do. I've almost talked myself out of it sitting here talking with you, though. But I've had that score in mind all day.
Don't get too pumped up over this game.
I need to actually stick with my original thoughts.
Okay. Well, let's go around the Big 12 real quick, recap some of those games. We won't talk about this game very much. I mean, it was what we all thought. Oklahoma goes up to Kansas, beats Kansas 62-7. Oklahoma's really playing some good football right now. They've got a balanced attack. Baker Mayfield's throwing the ball well. They're getting Samaje Perine involved.
Perine and mixing together. That's a scary tandem right now.
It's very scary. Very scary.
I think forward to that game, at TCU, I wonder how they're going to stop that running attack. And then you get Baker Mayfield running around. That's going to be a nightmare. But I think it's going to be another one of those shootouts. It's going to have to be for TCU.
Watch out for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean, Oklahoma could very well end up with the situation they got down at Baylor and you got your suspect defense at TCU. I mean, they very well could end up running the table. I think they're going to beat Oklahoma State too. So, I mean, you might be talking about 11-1 Oklahoma team, but easily Kansas is the worst team. They're not going to win a game this year. They've always they don't have any easy games remaining.
No, and I don't even know what to say about it anymore. It's just hard to believe they've fallen this far. I mean, even they were at least competitive in some of their games.
But if TCU moves to 9-0 next week, Coach Patterson will tell us Kansas is ready to play for a national championship.
Yeah,
I mean he respects.
He'll remind his kids of last year. You know,
and why not? I mean, you went up there and you almost lost your. I mean, it kind of did play a role, I guess you could say, in the final playoff rankings because people kept talking about that game.
Yeah.
But I don't think it'll happen that way in a couple weeks. But Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, what a barn burner. No defenses, 70-53 Oklahoma State. As we said, J.W. Walsh, Mason Rudolph both had good games. James Washington had a big game. Obviously, you can move the ball on Oklahoma State. I like Boykin a lot better than I do Patrick Mahomes. I still like Patrick Mahomes a lot. But if Mahomes can move the offense like that against Oklahoma State, Boykin's certainly going to have an opportunity to do that. I think Josh is going to have another good game. And this is the game that I think Kobe Listenby will break out against Oklahoma State because I think they're going to try to put someone over the top of Josh and take away from Kobe. Kobe's going to have a good chance to run some vertical routes and get open. But 70-53, Oklahoma.
Not much to say about that game.
Yeah,
I know the game that got. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You had something else.
Texas Tech. I mean, they've got they've lost to Oklahoma, TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma State. Their 4 losses are to the top 4 teams in the conference. So, I mean, the rest of their schedule plays in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, they could finish 8-4. They really could. I think the biggest surprise this weekend, I guess I could see where it wouldn't be a surprise, but the Iowa State-Texas game, the fact that Texas couldn't even put a point on the board. They didn't even get past midfield until late in the third quarter. I think they made it past midfield twice in the whole game. Iowa State was physical. They took it to Texas from the opening kick, and Texas's offense is just unbelievably
Texas
bad.
Back to reality. And you know, if Strong does make it through the season, you know he's going to get rid of some of the offensive guys. And obviously, I know there's been some speculation, or not really even speculation, but just kind of some worries that they would go after someone, like a Sonny Cumbie or Doug Meacham. And why not, kill 2 birds with 1 stone? It helps you it helps you with your team, and it hurts the other team that they're coming from. But man, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew you were rubbing your hands together, with excitement seeing that Texas was getting shut out. But
I couldn't believe it. I thought they were going to score at the end, and I love the fact that Iowa State was able to kind of have the stand there at the end and not let them score. That's good for Iowa State, and I like Paul Rhodes, and so I like to see that. And they've had a couple of close losses to Texas the last couple of years. I kind of felt like they owed Texas one. 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago in Iowa State that the Cyclones got completely jobbed?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I felt like that was kind of
Jonathan Gray fumbled and they were running it back.
Yes, and that really it cost Iowa State that game, and so it was good to see them get a win. They're a tough team. They're physical. They hit hard. That's going to be a fun team to watch. I think TCU might have actually dodged a little bit of a bullet facing Richardson instead of
Joel Lanning. Well, you saw the one time Lanning was in there, he threw that 74-yarder to Lazard for a touchdown.
And he looks good. He looks good moving in the pocket. He's got a big arm, and they've got the receivers and that young running back. They're going to be
Mike
they're going to be tough.
rushes for 156 against them.
Yeah, so
I wish Allen Lazard would have caught another pass or something though. 6 catches for 66 yards.
Yeah, that's tough.
God, I kind of cringed just looking at that stat line, man. God bless him.
Well, it was a good win for Iowa State, and hopefully they can close out the season strong. Are they 3-5 now, or what,
yeah? I think they're 3-5.
3-5, and Texas is now
3-5.
3-5 as well.
Are they 3-5 or they won 4 games?
No, they're 3-5. And wasn't it Charlie Strong last year that said that Texas will not lose 5 games again in a season while he's the coach there? That lasted all of 1 year, not even a year.
No, I thought he said it this year. Was it last year that he said
Was
they
it
would
last
never
year?
lose? I can't remember. I thought it was this year, but
Either
oh
way,
well.
he was wrong. And I think you see what happens with Texas. They got a little bit of momentum going. It's like the guys kind of step back. Okay, we're Texas.
Yeah.
We're back. But they forgot what it takes to put in the work week in and week out.
Talk about Texas for a second. They still got Texas Tech. They still got Baylor. And
There's
they still
2 losses.
Yeah. And I guess they got West Virginia. West Virginia could easily beat them.
Texas could be looking at a 3-9 season or a 4-8 season.
They've played Kansas, right?
Yeah.
Okay, they beat Kansas.
Wait. Did they play Kansas? No, they play them this weekend.
They play Kansas this weekend?
Yeah.
Okay. So that should be a win for them. They're playing at home, but
So I think they get to 4-8. I think they finish 4-8 this year.
is that enough to keep Charlie Strong around?
I still think they gave him one more year.
If he doesn't want to leave for Miami.
Get
back to your Florida roots.
Interesting. There's something to be said for that too. Charlie Strong's the kind of guy that could go to Miami and do well in Miami.
Yeah.
And
And he's not going to have the pressure.
he doesn't have to deal with all the
100,000 alumni telling him how to run his program.
Yeah, that's a tough job. I don't envy. Yeah, I'm sure he's getting paid handsomely, but that's that's a job I don't know that anybody would.
There's going to definitely, regardless, there's going to be some major staff changes at the end of the season.
He's going to have
that
to,
program.
or it's going to cost him his job.
Yeah.
He's going to have to make a change on offense, period. He's got loyalty to the guys he's been with for a while, but if he doesn't make a change, it's going to cost him his job, and that's just it.
Well, it's kind of the same thing with Coach Patterson. It wasn't going to cost him his job, but he knew he had to make a change in this conference, and you had to win with offense. And when you don't have an offense, when you get shut out with the talent that they have, I mean, obviously they've got to find a solution at quarterback because right now Tyrone can't pass, Gerard can't pass. I say they give Kai Loxley a chance to see what he can do. Why not? I mean, you've seen proof that your other 2 quarterbacks are having the most difficult time throwing the football. But anyway, we could talk about Texas all night long.
I just want to say one last thing about that game. I could almost guarantee you, out of the 85-man roster, there's not a single guy on Iowa State that had a Texas offer. Not a single one.
Yeah.
And that's a team full of 2-stars and JUCO kids beating a team full of the top-rated players in the country coming out of high school. And all that tells me is
Coaching.
there's coaching, but then there's also a culture of entitlement that comes along with that school at this time. And I think that's really been one of their major downfalls. It started under Mack Brown and it's continued with Charlie Strong.
Well, let's look ahead and predict some of these Big 12 games that are happening this weekend. First, let's talk about Baylor and Kansas State. They're going to be playing on national television tomorrow night. Or actually tonight. You guys will be hearing this on Thursday morning. Man, all I got to say is when we went up there for the Kansas State TCU game, excuse my French, but they're damn sure better be the same kind of environment that they had up there for TCU with another top program coming in.
I just don't think there will be. They've had so many heartbreaking losses back to back to back. Do they have any fight left in their fan base?
You're playing a Thursday night game on national television. You're playing against the number 6 team in the country that's undefeated. It's going to rain. You have a freshman quarterback that's making his first start. Let's talk about that for a second. We're going to talk more about Baylor than these other programs. I'm kind of at the point where I don't think Baylor's going to see a huge drop-off with Jarrett Stidham. Not because I think Jarrett Stidham's as good as Seth Russell. I hear all this, Jarrett's good as Seth Russell. He might even be better. I get that. I see where a lot of those guys are coming from because if you look at guys like RG3 and Nick Florence and Bryce Petty and Seth Russell, they weren't highly recruited quarterbacks coming out of high school. Jarrett Stidham was. Jarrett Stidham was the top quarterback in the country along with Kyler Murray. Depending on who you asked, it was either Kyler Murray or Jarrett Stidham as their top quarterback in the country. So I get where people are saying Jarrett's going to be better. I still think as a true freshman, though, even though he's got experience, he got in some of these games, playing against a team on the road for your very first start in an environment that Kansas State can produce against a pretty savvy coach in Bill Snyder. Bill Snyder's going to be able to throw some coverages at him that he probably hasn't seen. But I still think Baylor, even though they're going to have a drop-off, it's not going to be a huge one, because I've said this about Baylor quarterbacks for a long time. And all you got to do to believe my point is look at the NFL and see how those guys have developed. Baylor quarterbacks take a couple steps back, throw a deep pass.
Yeah, let your athletic guys run under it.
Yeah, let your athletes run under it. If you can't do that, we'll hand it off. We'll get the defense to play back for you, because we're going to throw vertical no matter what. We're going to throw vertical probably every other play, every other 2 plays. We're going to throw vertical to get the defense back, and we're going to let you hand off to Shock Linwood behind that massive offensive line, and we're going to win the game for it. And I think Art Briles said we're not asking Jarrett Stidham to drive the bus. He can sit in the back and read if he wants to. And that's really, if you look at the way RG3 has played as an NFL quarterback, obviously he's a backup now. Where's Bryce Petty? And it's like I told you last year. I was more concerned with Baylor on 3rd and 10 plays than I was 3rd and 2, because I was not scared one bit about Bryce Petty's ability to throw short passes.
Right.
I haven't seen enough of Jarrett yet this year to kind of determine where he's at, but I know he's not going to be asked to do a lot.
I don't know what you're going to know after the game tonight, since we are going to be airing this Thursday morning. I don't know what you're going to know for certain, but I think what you're going to see is a young man that's going to be thrust into an adverse situation. It's going to be raining. It's his first start. All the pressure, all the playoff polls just came out. Mm-hmm. He knows everybody in the country is watching him to see if he can carry the torch. It's going to come down to if he can overcome those nerves, how cool he is. Is he going to be a kid that's got ice water in his veins, or is he going to be a kid that's going to take a couple of games to get it figured out? Because if he's a kid that takes a couple of games to figure it out, Baylor's season is going to be over.
Yeah.
And and that pressure alone might be enough to make him crack. We'll see. We're going to get to find out. I'll say this. I think he'll have the full playbook at his disposal. I don't think they're going to dial it down a whole lot.
No, because it's throw vertical, hand off to Shock.
Exactly. And
throw vertical, hand off to Shock.
And he can run the ball.
Run a slant to Corey.
And he can run the ball.
Run a reverse to Corey. It's not a people can make fun of TCU. All Boykin does is throw up jump balls. That's not the case. If you think, and you know who you are, people. If you think that Boykin throws jump balls, you have not watched one bit of TCU football this year. Because we hear it.
Yeah.
We hear how Boykin's jump ball. That is not the fact. I want you to show me plays where other quarterbacks around the country or in this league, Big 12 conference, have been able to make the throws that he has from a right hash to the left sideline or throw over the middle the way he does. He throws it all over the field.
He does. And those jump balls that people are referencing, he's putting that ball where he wants to, high, where his 6'3" receiver that can jump through the freaking out of the stadium.
Watch your mouth.
Where he can jump out of the stadium. He knows he's going to put it where only he can catch the ball. So you got an athlete with Listenby on the other side. All these guys can go up and get the ball. He utilizes that. And the
same people that are claiming all Boykin does is throw the jump ball. What would you do if you had a receiver that can make those plays? Just like what would you do if you had a receiver that can run vertical routes all day? You're going to throw vertical. Yeah. So anyone that's complaining about Boykin's throws needs to take a look in the mirror at their own fan base and realize, hey, we do pretty much the same dang thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's going to be a fun game to watch. I can't wait to
Looking
tune
forward
in.
to it.
I wish if it was Oklahoma, it would be a different story. But I think Kansas State, to predict this game, I don't think Kansas State's going to have enough offense to, even if they can come out and play lights out on defense, I just don't think they're going to have enough offense to be able to win the game.
The good news, I think, for K-State is the fact that Baylor's defense is still not world beaters.
Still suspect.
And this is a 17.5-point spread. Baylor's favored by 17.5. I'd be surprised if they won it by that much, honestly. But I think they do come out of Manhattan with the win.
Yeah, they'll. I agree with you. I don't think they'll cover the spread, but I do think they'll win. Texas Tech, West Virginia. Texas Tech's coming off a pretty bad loss. West Virginia's coming off a pretty bad loss. These two coaching staffs know each other. Holgorsen obviously spent time at Texas Tech. I want to say he even coached Kingsbury. West Virginia is tough to play in Morgantown. this might be a game that you actually catch me on. I think you're 3 games behind, but I'm gonna go with the Red Raiders on the road in Morgantown.
Here's why I'm gonna go with West Virginia. I think they're 0-4 right now in Big 12 play, and that's tough. And I think Holgerson's on the hot seat right now, and I do think that is a proud program, and I think they have a good defense. They have a physical defense, and I think being at home will be enough for them to get the win. Tech is they're scary on offense, but they're a different animal on the road, I think. So we'll see. It's an early kick, so it'll be 11 a.m. So we'll see. I'm going to go with West Virginia at home, so that's going to be the one.
That 11 a.m. kickoff makes it even better for my prediction because West Virginia don't have enough time to burn the couches and get drunk all day. Let's go to Iowa State and Oklahoma. Obviously, Iowa State's coming off a big win, not only on the scoreboard but morally. They're not going to have enough against Oklahoma, though. Oklahoma plays great at home. Offense is clicking. I would like to see Iowa State keep this game close, but when you're talking playoff perspective, you need to see teams like Oklahoma and Baylor win these games. So I'm going to go with the Sooners. Sooners going to get it done. Spread's 25.5. They may cover 25.
What if Iowa State just threw a wrench in this whole thing? It's not going to happen. Give me OU. I think they'll cover the spread as well. I think at home, like you said, there's so much on the line. I don't see them not showing up for this game. This isn't Texas across the field from them.
The biggest question about Oklahoma: how in the hell did they lose to Texas? Kansas and Texas. Can Texas score enough against Kansas? If Kansas wins this game, does Charlie Strong make it out of Austin with his head coaching position?
I don't see how he makes it to next week. If they lose to Kansas, I've been saying that he's going to get another year. If they lose to Kansas, I think they set fire to his office on Sunday. I mean, I don't see how he can possibly make it out of Austin with his job. I don't see how there's any way that Kansas can win this game.
You know what's crazy is this is a 28.5 point spread with a team that didn't even score a touchdown last week.
Can Texas score 28?
They're not going to score. They might. I don't think it's going to be a 28-point win for them. They'll get the win over Kansas. Kansas is they would probably need to score 30 to 40 with the way their defense plays, and their offense isn't going to put up 30 or 40 against Texas. It would be a huge win for the program and a great win for David Beatty if he could somehow go down to Austin and pull that off. But I think Texas is going to rebound this week. Man, what a way their schedule worked out. Iowa State and Kansas back to back. They should be
getting ready
going above. They should be. They should have been playing for above 500 this week, but now they're just still playing for under 500. But anyway, it's going to be an exciting weekend of football. Can't wait to see it starting tomorrow night. And these next few weeks, going to be interesting.
So you do think TCU goes to Oklahoma State and wins?
I do. Oh, yeah, we got to talk about that. We're not going to predict our scores, but TCU and Oklahoma State, it's a much different team than it was 2 years ago. Like we said earlier, Trevon did not look anywhere like he does now. I obviously have a lot of respect for Oklahoma State. I like a lot of their players. We obviously talked to a lot of their players because TCU recruited the same guys. They've got some, obviously a very good defensive line. They got some good linebackers. They've got a good secondary. They've got a good offense. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. I'm kind of glad. I kind of agree with Coach P that this game isn't at night. I like the 2:30 game. I like any game that's played during the night or during the day when you're on the road because for some reason night games are just weird. They're just weird to me.
It takes a little bit. It takes a little bit of the piss and vinegar out of the crowd. So. Yeah. What did you see Jarrell Owens' sack last week?
No.
That dude looks scary. That's the one that got away. He's 265 now. He came on a speed rush and sacked Mahomes, and he looked like a monster coming off the edge. He hadn't got to play a whole lot, but he does have a couple sacks this year. But he's going to be another one that's going to follow in the line behind Ogba and those guys. But I like TCU to break their streak of losing in Stillwater. I think the Frogs get it done. It's going to be a heck of a game. It's going to be a heck of an environment. I think both teams feel disrespected from kind of where they are in the rankings. I mean, heck, Oklahoma State's 14 and they were 8-0. They got Memphis in front of them. So I think Oklahoma State feels like they got something to prove. But I just think, I said it a couple weeks ago and I still believe this. I feel like this is a team of destiny this year, and I'm going to keep picking them. And I think TCU wins this game on the road.
Darrell Owens, a decommitment from last year, within a week of signing day. News came down yesterday. I've heard some things. I mean, there's a lot of recruiting things to talk about as far as decommitments, commitments, and we keep saying it's going to be a crazy final 2 months of the recruiting cycle. So buckle in, enjoy the ride. But the first thing we want to get talking about is obviously Isaiah Graham committing last week. That was a huge pickup for them, in my opinion. I saw Isaiah in a camp last summer. He's 6'1", 180, runs
smooth,
really, really good routes. He's put up huge numbers for Bastrop this year. 4-star kid, 44th ranked receiver in the country. It's a guy that even when they had the receivers that they had, that they still wanted to take just because of the talent level he is. He's going to fit in nicely with this offense. Someone asked me who he reminds me of. He reminds me of Josh Boyce. Maybe not as fast as Josh was, but about the same size, about the same precision on his routes, and certainly catches the ball well like Josh did.
I kind of thought of him as more of like a faster Jimmy Young. That's kind of who he reminded me of.
Yeah, that's a good comparison too.
He runs really good routes. He's got great hands, and I like this pickup a lot. I think it's especially when you lose a guy like Courtney Lark. That's a big pickup to turn around and add that right back. So one thing TCU's I think going forward with this offense, I don't think they're ever going to lack for skilled players.
No,
being in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex with this offense and the Big 12, they're never going to lack for skill guys. So guys, don't lose your cool if they lose a receiver prospect here or there. I mean, they've got the number one JUCO receiver in the country committed.
Yeah.
They've got some of the most electric playmakers already committed. They've got other guys like Isaac Nauta and Stephen Sullivan still very much considering TCU. So the cupboard's not bare, and it's not going to be, not as long as this offense is here.
Well, I'm glad that I mentioned earlier, too, that the Frogs were going to be losing a key player, and sure enough, it happened. Courtney Lark decommitted. And as I stated on the board, this was a mutual thing. Courtney's going to have some problems with academics. He needs to get some things taken care of. TCU pretty much saw the writing on the wall, and basically, like I said, just a mutual thing. It's going to work out better for both Courtney and TCU. Obviously, with TCU already landing Isaiah, because Courtney rated as a 4-star as well, 43rd receiver, then you replace him with Isaiah, who is a faster version of Courtney. Not as tall, but he's ranked 44th. Courtney is a great high school receiver. Doesn't play really tough competition in his district, but is still putting up some good numbers. He's not a fast receiver. When he ran at the Nike camp, both you and I saw it, and we were kind of like, I thought he was faster than that. He ran a 4.72, which is one of the slower times out of any receiver in attendance.
There were some bad times that day because it was a little cool, but that was 4.72 is a 4.72.
Well, let me tell you, we saw the other kid that the Frogs are heavy after. Tyree Cleveland ran a 4.38.
Yep, that's right.
So wasn't too bad for everyone.
That's right.
And speaking of Tyree, Jared Anderson went down there last Friday because he recruited Cordell from Westfield. So they're still heavily pursuing Tyree. If he wants to call up and say, TCU, I want to come join the fold, they're going to take him. They're going to take him. They're going to take a lot of talented receivers. I would say they have a spot for him, and they have a spot for Sullivan. I don't think there's going to be any other receivers that they take after that. As far as the other big news from the weekend, Travion Williams, it's a fluid situation. That's all I can tell you. I got some information that he could possibly be decommitting. There was some other information that basically had it down to the time that he was going to be decommitting. The guys that I talk with, apparently Travion was just going to make the decommitment without even telling his parents. So he hadn't even talked to his parents about it. And TCU kind of to kind of tell you, TCU didn't even know that he was going to be making the trip to A&M until they saw an article about it. So Travion hasn't been really upfront with TCU right now. And I don't know why he's being like that. We've talked to Travion plenty of times. We've seen him at camps. We've seen him.
He's been one of the leaders of this class, vocal leaders.
Exactly.
But, I think there's something to be said for the fact that he did hold off, that his parents told him to kind of slow down. Let's talk about it. And I thought it was very significant that Shaywell came out and tweeted right then 100% TCU.
Here's what I think's going on, though. I think A&M, there's no question A&M wants one of the two. A&M wants Travion or they want Shaywell. I can't confirm this because I'm obviously not Travion or Shaywell, but I think the two have talked about the possibility of them listening to A&M. Maybe Travion's trying to be proactive and say, that's my spot. I'm going to take it. Because I know when he went down to A&M, he loved his visit. His parents loved the visit. A&M selling him on engineering. A&M selling him on the fact they have no other home run threats on the roster. They do have Rakeem Boyd committed to him, but he's not the type of back Travion is.
Travion's a Trey Williams type back, and that's what they're looking for.
They have Trevor Spates committed to him. If they had Travion commit to him, I can guarantee you they're not going to care for Rakeem Boyd or Trevor Spates to look around, period. I think it would hurt A&M's chances with a guy like Devwall Whaley, and that's a guy who TCU is going to go after. Right now, the guy that they're going after, running back standpoint, is Kyle Porter.
Right.
I know for a fact that Kyle has a very high interest in TCU. Kyle doesn't do interviews. Kyle's tough to get on the phone. He's more about team. He's been hurt this year, so he hasn't had a lot of chances to perform well for Katy, but obviously we've all seen his highlights from his junior season and what he was able to do. He scored 6 or 7 touchdowns in a game earlier this year. But obviously a lot of people ask what happens if Travion decommits. They may only take one commitment from a running back. They're not going to reach. They're not going to reach for a kid just because they're wanting to take 2 running backs. So if some reason they lose Travion and they do take Kyle Porter, they're going to take Kyle Porter. If Kyle Porter wants to commit, they're going to take him. Okay, if Kyle Porter commits and he's going to be the only running back, then they're going to shift their focus to another position. Maybe another receiver, maybe a tight end, maybe another offensive lineman. Offensive line, they need to get on the ball with because they're going to lose Denzel Okafor. Okafor is, I've been told, he's going to commit to Texas. TCU knows he's going to commit to Texas. He just hasn't made it publicly. That's a big loss for them because I've told several times on the board, asked me a couple months ago, asked me over the summer, I would have told you 10 out of 10 times Denzel is going to be a frog. I don't know what it is about Texas that has Denzel so enamored, but he did tell me he sees himself more at a big public school than he does a small private school. And there's nothing you can do about that.
There's always going to be those kids.
Yeah, and I'm not going to fault the kid just because, people look at Texas. For when these kids make the decision, it's not only about football. If that was the case, TCU wouldn't have signed the heck of a class that they signed after their 4-8 season a couple years ago.
Right.
The kids are getting smarter. They're looking at the broader spectrum of recruiting. They're looking at the academics. They're looking at the football program. They're looking at playing time. Maybe Denzel sees the big public school and he just thinks, you know what, it'd feel pretty cool if I got a chance to walk around with 50,000 students instead of 8,000.
For some kids, that's what they're looking for.
And some kids, they want to venture further from home. There's nothing wrong with that. He has never said anything wrong about TCU. I don't like the fact that some of our guys on the board are talking smack just because he's going to Texas. You can hate Texas all you want. But just because a kid's picking another program because Texas may suck right now, maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he wants to go down there and go to a university with thousands of students and have a chance to play early like he probably will.
Texas could be 2-10. That's still a team.
They're still going to recruit 4 and 5 star kids.
And kids have still grown up wanting to wear that Longhorn on the side of their helmet. That's not going to change. So TCU is recruiting with the big boys now. They are hauling in awesome recruits, and with this new territory is going to come decommitments and picking up other teams' commitments. You see it from Alabama. You see it from Oklahoma. You see it from Texas.
Any big-time program.
They all get decommitments. Everyone. So this is a game you have to understand that you're going to have to play at this level and settle in, because this is the way it's going to be going forward.
I understand the argument from fans that, TCU's playing extremely well the last 2 years. They've already proven that they can play in a good conference when people told them they had no chance of competing in. They have stability with one of the longest tenured coaches in America. Great offense, a rebuilding defense. Obviously, with 30 freshmen playing this year, you're going to have a chance to play early. But again, there's a lot of factors that weigh heavily in your favor. But sometimes it could be the one factor that the kid's not looking at. And in Denzel's case, I think it's the fact that he just wants to go to a bigger school.
Can I bring up a guy?
Sure.
I'm just going to talk about him briefly, but I actually had contact with the elusive. He does exist. It's not like Sasquatch. Like, he actually does exist. Derek Willies, big physical receiver out of Trinity Valley. Once was with Iowa. Texas Tech commit. It's been a really confusing recruitment for him. But I'll say this. The reason why is because he hasn't been very vocal. He's wanted to keep things under wraps. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, there was a story that someone posted on the board already, and I wanted you, because you have information on it. You have information that's different from what that story says.
Correct.
Let's bring it to the forefront.
I asked Willies yesterday if he was committed to Tech, and his answer was he is open. He is still looking at 4 schools: TCU, Missouri, Florida, and Oklahoma.
So where's Texas Tech in that conversation?
They weren't. And so
okay.
And so take what some of these guys – I was surprised that Oklahoma was able to get an interview with him where he allowed them to go on record because he's been really wanting to stay off the record. He didn't want stories written about him.
This is probably going to be the last time he talks to anyone, too, because
I'm sure that this wasn't supposed to get out because that's not what he wanted. But I know that he is in contact with the TC coaching staff often. As a matter of fact, whenever I talked to him last night, he had just got off the phone with Coach Anderson. And Jeremy's even mentioned in the past that he was committed to TCU. He was a secret commit. We're not going to say that that's still not the case. I'm just telling you, he's saying he's open. He's wanting to look at some other schools. I think OU is a serious threat. I think Florida will be a serious threat. But I think TCU has just as good a chance as any of those schools to land him ultimately on signing day.
It's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, he's an early graduate. We'll all know in the next month and a half. He officially visited TCU over the summer, so there's no chance.
And he was there for the West Virginia game.
Yeah.
We didn't see him. I think he might have been hiding under a hoodie or something.
The ever-elusive Derek Willies.
He's like a ninja, but no, he was there. He said he liked the game. He liked the atmosphere. And he had already been to TCU for an official, so he likes the coaching staff. He likes what the Frogs offer on offense. He's a big physical kid. Well, I cannot explain to you guys enough.
Just watch his highlights.
When we saw him in person at the camp, it was like a man among boys. They could not cover him. He was the most physically impressive receiver I've seen at a camp in I don't know how long. Maybe ever.
Well, the people we talked with said that he, take it for what it's worth, probably the most important voice we talked with said he was one of the most impressive receivers he's ever had at a camp, if not the most impressive receiver they've ever had at a camp.
And that's a very important person that said that.
Yeah. So it is what it is. We'll all wait and see, just like everything else. We'll keep it close, and if we obviously hear anything, we'll be letting you guys know about it. But I do want to apologize because I didn't respond to you after you told me the news. I didn't respond for about 5 minutes because that's how long it took me to
get up
come to my senses, get off the floor. I hit my head because I was kind of surprised.
No, I was shocked he responded. I mean, I've reached out to him before, and he never had. I just reached out to him last night, and out of nowhere, he responded. So
he must have been in a good mood.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's just we tell you recruiting is weird, guys, and it really is. You never know when you're going to get a hold of somebody. You never know when you're going to get a little nugget of information. And that same nugget of information that he gives you, that could change in a week.
Yeah.
So buckle up, like Jeremy said last night. This is going to be a heck of a ride these last couple months. So just enjoy it because, TCU's going head-to-head with LSU and Texas and Oklahoma and Florida State and every top program in the country recruiting-wise, and they're winning these battles. So sit back and appreciate what you're watching and just enjoy the ride. Don't get too worked up.
Here's a little nugget for you guys. I will tell you, from what I've gathered, what I've been told, there could be a commitment coming very soon from a commitment that did not happen a few weeks ago. You guys remember, very talented athlete, too much of a good athlete to pass on. He had to get some things straightened out, but I would look for Cameron Williams to be a frog. Don't know when, but I think he's going to be a frog. They're going to work the situation out. They're being patient with him. He is just too good of an athlete to not take a risk.
You can't pass on a guy like that, and he's so versatile. I know he wants to play receiver, and he might come in and light it up on receiver. TCU will give him a shot, but if he doesn't, you've got an All-American caliber athlete that could play linebacker in this, or even grow into a defensive end in this defense that would be downright scary. And so that's why I think TCU's willing to take that chance.
Travez Moore, to finish up, interesting, golly, 72 hours for that kid. We all saw that he committed to LSU on Monday, but it was crazy. We saw Isaiah Graham commit, his teammate, on Friday to TCU. Travez tried to commit not too long after that. The coaches still had to meet as a staff and discuss that. Ultimately, it was just too much of a – I've said it a thousand times on the board. TCU's in a very, very good position to be picky right now. They don't have to take risk kids. They don't have to take those type of kids that might have some trouble with grades, may have trouble qualifying, or may be too much of a tweener. Travez was kind of a tweener. They didn't know if he's linebacker, defensive end, whatever he is. He's a good athlete, but his athletic skill didn't have anything with them passing on him. There's still a situation with LSU where they don't know if they're going to take him. I know as of Monday morning, he was trying to commit to TCU.
Correct.
I'm telling you, had people tell me he had tried to commit to TCU. He was trying like crazy, and that's why I kept saying, watch for the infamous delaying his decision announcement. I was shocked, as was the LSU people, that he chose LSU.
He turned around, instead of waiting, he just turned around and tried to commit to LSU. He just
turned around and just said, the heck with it, I'm committing to LSU.
Right.
And the LSU's still up in the air about, are they going to take him? So his recruitment's not anywhere close to being done, I don't think. Be interesting to watch. Another offer today to a JUCO top prospect in the country at corner.
The number one JUCO corner in the country.
Jamarcus King, 6'1", 180. Kid. Has offers from 17 schools now with TCU offering. Auburn's among those, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Baylor,
he was
Florida.
Committed to Auburn. He decommitted. One thing I noticed, and I didn't, trust me guys when I say this, it's not just the hair. But when I watched him on film, he reminded me of a taller Jason Verrett. He's very physical at the point of attack. Right as soon as the ball snapped, he jams his guy.
Yeah.
And his size and his frame would be a huge asset in the Big 12. And if he really wants to challenge himself against elite receivers in the country, this would be a conference that he would end up in. But good-looking JUCO prospect. I'll be interested to see if TCU gets a visit from him. He's already scheduled for a visit on the 14th with Baylor. So that
I would say he probably squeezes in an official visit to TCU at some point. But anyway, man, we rambled on for a long time, man.
That's all right. Had a lot to talk about tonight.
We did, and we'll have a lot to talk about next week as well. But anyway, guys, we enjoyed it as always. Thank you guys so much for paying attention, listening. If you have any questions that we didn't go over tonight, please be sure to ask us about it. Until next time, I'm Jeremy Clark for Jeremiah Glenn. Have a good week, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys.